So many places in Turkey, not just Istanbul, feel ancient and modern simultaneously. Sleek new trams, huge out-of-town supermarkets, bars bursting with life and alcohol. But there's the call to prayer as well, of course, alongside many more women wearing headscarves now.
It is just textile. How can you be afraid from textile?
Ali Tushuz, he's an Istanbul bookseller. He sells mainly English language books, mostly to the international Turkish elite.
We have a big tolerance, you know. We have a big respect for the other religion. You see, church, synagogue, mosque is together. Everybody can live here freely.
Ali Tushuz, and here's somebody quite interesting. Asil. I know Asil's surname, but she didn't want me to use it. She thinks that Ali, the bookseller, is wrong, that Turkey is going into cultural reverse, and she doesn't want her opinion to get her into trouble at work. Do you cover your head when you go out?
No, no.
I think more people do now than used to.
They think that things will become easier business-wise if they are covered up, and that's a political act in itself, and that's what the secular people in Turkey are against. They're not against the hijab, they're against people who use it as a political symbol to further their careers or their education.
Do you think it does help to further people's careers?
I think it does in the state sector, definitely. I know people who haven't been employed because of their political affiliations. In a blink of an eye, it became like that. So it's very strange. Ask any Turkish person, they won't know when the transition happened. It's very strange.
But it's also true that more women who've always wanted to cover their heads now feel that it's safe to do so. The ban on wearing the headscarf in universities has all but vanished. But which way to read that? Is it evidence of tolerance or the reverse? These little boys playing football in the street should have a better future soon, with 4 years longer compulsory education. That's a feature of the education bill, which is currently struggling through Parliament in Ankara. It's struggling because opponents detect a repressive agenda, a window after 8 years when girls could be removed from school to prepare them for marriage. The measure would also allow very young children to attend religious schools, which would be against the secular spirit of the nation's founder, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk. Several angry protests have been dispersed by police with water cannon. A businessman, Ismail Çalışkan, knows what he'll do if this bill is passed.
If they change the system that way, I will try to give education to my daughters in another country, because they should have a free mind. They will inject their ideas while they are 6, 7 years old. So it's not good.
That image of injecting children with ideas sounds like brainwashing. Is that what you're afraid of?
I'm not against Islam. I'm Muslim. I'm against when you are 6 or 7 years old, and if they start to educate you about the religion, isn't it a brainwashing?
Ismail Çalışkan, but if a new generation of ultra-conservative, brainwashed citizens really is the goal, they'll have a hard time putting the clock back. This is Antakya, old Antioch in biblical days. It's a very traditional, multi-faith town, mosques, churches and a synagogue. There's a once secret church in a cave near here where it's said St. Peter and St. Paul met to discuss coexistence between Christians and Jews. In modern Antakya, covered markets, caged birds, smart boutiques, nightclubs. The impressive live slide guitar was spilling out of the open windows of the cabaret bar late last night. But don't be seduced by this serene surface. A Turkish artist, Nazim Diktaş, warns me. He says there's a nasty, reactionary, aggressively male cultural undercurrent pulling Turkey down.
Nationalism, infecting, poisoning the social texture. In some cases in a xenophobic way, in some cases in a very dominant, macho, nasty way. Anti-feminist, anti-women, anti-feminine also. Any sign of differences displayed by individuals are increasingly frowned upon. The ruling powers have a very clear, narrow agenda that they expect people to obey.
And many people here believe that that agenda is set by an ultra-conservative traditional Islamic values imam in the United States called Fethullah Gulen, whose followers, it is alleged, have formed a kind of cult here, a sort of Freemasonry which has infiltrated the police and the judiciary.
Hugh Sykes in Istanbul, and Hugh's taken some time off his travels across the Middle East to be here in London with us on The World Today. Hugh, good to have you with us.
Good morning, Andrew.
Turkey has a big role to play in the coming days and in the coming weeks and months too, because we have this big UN deadline coming this week in Syria after a very deadly weekend already there. How is this going to play out in your view?
Well, everybody all over the world is hoping that Syria is going to keep its promise, finally having broken promises to stick to deadlines before and stick to ceasefires before and withdraw troops before. We'll believe it when we see it. The images, I've just been watching images in your control cubicle on television coming from the Middle East of the latest violence in Syria. Appalling images of children shot, maimed, killed, slaughtered by this brutal regime. And just to the north, there's Turkey, and there are more and more refugees from Syria fleeing this terrible violence and going into Turkey. At least 23,000 Syrian refugees in southern Turkey now. So Turkey is deeply concerned and very closely involved. And indeed, a few weeks ago, the Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan suggested the possibility of setting up a buffer zone inside Syria in order to help protect the refugees and to prevent them having to come across the border into Turkey. But that would involve invading Syria, so I don't think that's going to happen.
Turkey wants to be a big player on the world stage. It wants to join the EU. It wants to do all those things.
Well, I'm not so sure it does. I think the aspirations to the European Union are slipping back, and Turkey is looking much more to the east now. Prime Minister Erdogan was in Iran last week. He's placing Turkey much more in relation to the countries to the east of Turkey, more than to the west now, especially because of the problems that the European Union has been facing. I mean, if you were trying to join the European Union now, would you really want to join? When you
might get reduced membership fees, possibly.
Well, quite. But Iraq, I mean, there's an astonishingly close relationship with Iraq now, a massive trade between Turkey and Iraq, etc.
What sort of role can Turkey play? What kind of role do the Turkish people want it to play?
Well, there's huge Turkish pride. There's the new Ottoman Empire, but Ottoman soft power people are talking about. But there's the internal conflict in Turkey as well, which I found fascinating. There's this conflict between the secularists and the religious. You had the Pakistani High Commissioner on a few minutes ago quoting Muhammad Ali Jinnah, the founder of Pakistan, saying that religion must have nothing to do with the affairs of the state. Well, Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, when he founded Turkey in 1923, also said very much the same thing and removed religion from schools. But now there's a move back with a new education bill, for example, which was passed in Turkey just 3 days ago, to reinsert religion into Turkish schools, to give very young Turkish children the option to do Quranic studies. And there's a conflict there between people who believe that Turkey should remain the secular state, that religion should stay inside its box, so to speak, should remain a family affair and should never stray into the realm of education. And there's a conflict there. And I don't think that particular force of very conservative religious Islam, not political Islam, will get the upper hand for a very long time. But it might do in the long run, because if a new generation of children, much more strictly religiously educated, come up through the schools, in 20 years from now, Turkey could be a very different place, much more overtly Islamic than it is at the moment.
And currently, how much opposition is there to the sort of religion invading the educational?
It's very difficult to gauge because there aren't opinion polls on exactly that. And if there were, it'd be difficult to tell whether people were saying exactly what they felt. All I can say is that from my quite extensive travels in Turkey over the past few years, it's not just Istanbul, which is astonishingly Western in many ways, although of course there's the mosque and the incredibly loud and sometimes deafening call to prayer, thanks to Marshall amplifiers, perhaps, Jim Marshall, who died this week. But other places in Turkey, places which are much more close to rural agricultural Turkey, are also very busy, very lively, very Western looking, full of women whose heads are not covered, full of places overtly selling alcohol. Tuborg and Efes are the two most popular brands in Turkey. So I find it hard to think that Turkey is going to change back, so to speak, very quickly.
Now, there's very high youth unemployment in Turkey, or 20%. It's not high compared with other places at the moment. But is that a factor in that? Because obviously there are jobs, religious jobs.
It could be, and there are more likely to be more religious jobs now that the Imam Hatip schools, the old religious schools in Turkey, are being revived, and as a result of this education bill, more children are going to be able to go to them at a much earlier age than before, and presumably there'll be more jobs there. There is one of the disturbing things I've noted is a large number, I mean a significant number, maybe it's because I'm just acutely aware of it, having had it pointed out, of quite right-wing looking, if one could say that, very skinhead looking youths, and you see them greeting each other in the street, not only by shaking hands, but just by also bumping their foreheads together. And I'm told that is a sign of rampant right-wing Turkish youth, and it seems to me there's quite a lot of them about.
Patrick, in Washington, what do you make of what you're hearing?
Hi, Hugh. I'm wondering, Turkey used to be an ally of Syria, and it sort of flipped its position for a variety of reasons.
Well, mostly because of Assad. And
Sure.
I mean, Turkey's terribly disappointed with the way Syria was going. Turkey was going to be forming an economic area,
right,
an Eastern Mediterranean European Union, in effect, with Syria, with Jordan, and with Lebanon. All that's gone.
Well, what I'm wondering is Turkey not worried about what would happen if the regime in Damascus either walked away from power or was removed? Are they concerned at all about whether what comes next might actually be worse than the status quo?
Well, better the devil you know. Yes, I think very much so, and particularly because on the 12th of February, not widely reported, but Ayman al-Zawahiri, Osama bin Laden's successor as head of al-Qaeda, declared jihad against the Assad regime in Syria. The first time, I think, that al-Qaeda have declared jihad against anything other than an obviously Western target. So you have the spectre of al-Qaeda joining in with the opposition, who say they want to have nothing to do with al-Qaeda, but that's also what happened in Iraq. Al-Qaeda are a fairly irresistible force, and I think there's a huge danger that al-Qaeda's strength in Syria will grow, and that would be very disturbing to Turkey.
Hugh, it's great to have you on the programme this morning. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on the BBC World Service. Our correspondent Hugh Sykes here with us. Later